Happy Tuesday morning, everybody. Welcome into another chilly edition of Morning JOX here. Appreciate you making this a part of your morning each and every day. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell with you here until 7 o'clock. And yeah, if you thought you woke up yesterday and thought it was cold, well, you woke up today and thought it was even colder. So it's looking at 25 degrees right now in Birmingham.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas here as we get closer to Thanksgiving.
Well, it just kind of feels like it here because we didn't get any of the snow or the fun stuff, right? So
we
just get the cold. So congratulations to all of you Huntsville listeners who got a snow day yesterday. Is from a lot of what I saw, it looked like that was a nice treat for some of you. But yeah, here it's just really cold. So we're going to enjoy that. But yeah, bundle up today when you're on the way to work, school, whatever it may be, even though I know it's Veterans Day. So shout out to all of our veterans. We appreciate all of you that have made the ultimate sacrifice or currently are in serving in our military. But I guess a lot of you probably going to enjoy a day at home today. So that's actually nice with the way the weather is working right now. But we've got a great show for you this morning as we are going to start getting ready for the upcoming weekend of college football. Of course, Alabama is going to be hosting Oklahoma in a game that has a lot on the line, really, for the Crimson Tide, because if you win this game against Oklahoma, you're 99% sure you're going to go to the SEC championship game and the college football playoff, but you lose this game, and it makes that Iron Bowl mighty, mighty interesting because obviously that would be a game that would be a must-win for Alabama and also likely a must-win for Auburn if they want to go to a bowl game, right? So you're going to have a lot on the line potentially in that matchup. So a big one coming up for Alabama as they attempt to kind of secure their postseason spot this upcoming weekend. Auburn, as we know, they're taking a bye this week, so they're getting a little time off to go back and reflect on what happened against Vanderbilt and how they can carry that offensive momentum forward, but also how they can button back up the defense. And, who knows? Maybe it is a situation of last week was a crazy week for DJ Durkin, right? I'm sure he had a lot of things going on and not saying that he didn't, he's not doing his job. I'm just saying, like, when you're the interim head coach and you only have 5 days to prepare for a game, there's a lot of things going on that I could see being difficult to get to everything, right, in 1 week. So maybe the bye week kind of get some things back in order and we'll see a well-rounded Auburn team against Mercer.
Right, and I was going to say the quality of competition. No offense to Mercer. Trust me, I've seen them. They've been in the SoCon, and they've been
they're good. They're a good FCS team, yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, they are legit. But,
they're an FCS team.
Right, exactly. There's levels to this thing. But, again, like you said, though, for everything that we saw against Vanderbilt, and DJ Durkin really pulling every single string, trying to figure everything out in a short amount of time, to go out there and have that performance is very commendable. But also, like you said, now you got a bye week, and then you got Mercer on the other side. And again, no offense to Mercer, but you essentially have 2 bye weeks to get you prepared for the Iron Bowl that follows that. So this is going to be important. But I think what DJ Durkin saw, and even if you saw the post game video of them in the locker room, you feel better about the situation than you did when the head coach was actually paid to do his job. And now that he's not, DJ Durkin stepped in and he's like, okay, we can work with this.
Yes, he certainly can. So we'll see what the bye week holds for Auburn and what that means for them moving forward. But yeah, like you said, I mean, they're kind of going to have a couple weeks to prepare for the Iron Bowl. Alabama, I mean, they're going to play Eastern Illinois. So, I mean, again, you have to prepare for those games, but you kind of have 2 weeks for both of them to prepare for that game, and it should be a fun one down in Jordan-Hare coming up in just a matter of weeks. But let's start by rewinding the clock a little bit to yesterday because we actually got to hear, so we didn't get the traditional press conference from DJ Durkin and Auburn, right, because it's the bye week, so you don't get that on Monday on the bye week, but he was speaking at the Monday Morning Quarterback Club, where you actually got to hear some interesting things from DJ Durkin. There's 2 in particular, so we'll get to those, and then we'll let you get the highlights from Kalen DeBoer in his press conference yesterday. But while we're talking about Auburn on the subject, let's go ahead and hear from Mr. Durkin, the interim head coach there, because so this is now a situation that we heard some of you talking about yesterday. We had brought it up, I guess, a couple of weeks ago. But But I'll be honest with you, I didn't think Ashton Daniels was going to look as good as he did against Vanderbilt to where this was really a situation you were going to have to confront. But if you're not aware, Ashton Daniels essentially can redshirt and preserve his year of eligibility if he only plays in one more game. So he could play in the Iron Bowl, for example, but not against Mercer. And Auburn would have to put Jackson Arnold back out there. Maybe this is an opportunity for Deuce Knight. But that's something that we've talked about, right? And we know Hugh Freeze, before he was fired, he was asked about it, and he said, I'm going to try to win games, right? But now I think after the Vanderbilt game, maybe you want Ashton Daniels to be around for the future if you're Auburn. So this was DJ Durkin yesterday. Again, he's at the Monday Morning Quarterback Club. This was him. He was asked about Ashton Daniels and if they are going to have a conversation about allowing him to redshirt and maintain this year of eligibility.
His situation is kind of unique in that regard, and so we always try to do two things: what is best for the young man and his family, and what is best for the program. And so those are ongoing decisions and discussions throughout this week.
So there you go. They are currently and actively discussing that and what it would do moving forward. But I mean, you heard him right there, right? Like, they want to do right by the player, and so I imagine if Ashton Daniels said, hey, do you mind if I sit out the Mercer game and I'll come back ready to go for the Iron Bowl because I'd like to play another year of college football? Because let's be honest, right? If you're Auburn, based on what you saw against Vanderbilt, if you have a similar performance against Alabama, you're probably going to kick the tires on bringing back Ashton Daniels, and maybe he's your starter next year, potentially. So it's an interesting situation that not the one that I thought we would be in or be talking about with Auburn at this point in the season, but here we are, and maybe some optimism for the future with Mr. Daniels.
And with that being said, say he does take that route, and Jackson Arnold goes out there and lights up Mercer, then Deuce Knight comes in for mop-up duty, lights up Mercer. Which one of those quarterbacks hits the transfer portal starting next season? If you had to pick one of those quarterbacks to hit the transfer portal or to not be there the following year, which one would it be?
Probably. I don't think Jackson Arnold's there next year.
It's kind of where my head was at too, brother.
I just don't.
The tape is out on you now.
I think he will be a Group of 5 quarterback next year.
You think he's going to take the old, I was about to say Zach Calzada route, but nah. I'm with you, man. I think the jury is out on him. You're not that guy, pal.
I was about to say.
You're just not that guy.
Not saying that he can't go somewhere and work on his game and maybe be something, in the future, but, unfortunately right now he's a bust. It is what it is. So yeah, but I don't think he'll be around next year. But who knows?
Learn UTSA, buddy.
Maybe he's there for depth. Maybe so. Jeff Traylor's that's a good little program over there in San Antonio. All right, one more clip from DJ Durkin. I thought this was interesting as well because we've talked about this, and it's okay. So if DJ Durkin, is he legitimately a candidate for the job? Is he not? Is he just there on an interim basis? What if Auburn goes out and makes a hire? Could they maybe retain DJ Durkin as defensive coordinator? So he wasn't asked about that specifically, but he was asked about roster retention and how involved he is with retaining this roster and keeping these guys on the Plains. And I think his answer maybe is a little telling about what his intentions are.
Yeah, I'm very involved. I have a full-time investment in this program and this place and plan on being here for the long term. And so those are ongoing discussions all the time. I think the biggest thing to me is you can look at how our players responded and played together. I think that tells a lot about how they feel about one another and feel about this program.
So there you go. The part that I guess caught my ear was I have a long-term investment in this program. I plan on being here for the long term. That to me, and who knows, right? Maybe that's just his attitude of, yeah, I think that I'm going to get the head coaching job, and he's just kind of in that mindset of already, preparing as if that does happen in the future. But maybe that's also his way of kind of saying, hey, I love being at Auburn. I love being a part of this program. My family loves being here. I love these players. And, whoever it is that comes in and is the next head coach, if they want me here, I'm happy to be here and to help with that transition because I love being a part of the Auburn program. So I just thought that was, he didn't have to say that. So maybe it's nothing. Again, maybe it's just coach speaking him, trying to vouch for the job. I don't know, but seems like he maybe wouldn't be opposed to an opportunity to stick around even if he's not the head coach.
Mm-hmm. And I think the best thing that could have happened, well, the best thing that could have happened was a win on Saturday. But to have the gritty performance that you had, at least offensively, because that was just the biggest question mark. And, for Hugh Freeze to be an offensive guy, and I hate beating a dead horse, just continue to bring him up, but it was so bad and just so toxic that, the guy that you hired to fix the offense never got it together. And, in hindsight, we're looking like maybe Peyton Thorne ain't the guy. Hank Brown ain't the guy. Jackson Arnold ain't the guy. Ashton Daniels ain't the guy. And you felt like it was a quarterback issue. And the moment he's not on the field anymore, this offense looks completely new. Like, just completely different. Where, Eric Singleton they're feeding their playmakers the ball. Things that we expected coming into the season, you never got until week 10. And DJ Durkin is kind of the recipient. Now, yeah, the defense took a little bit of a bump, but also a lot of credit went to Vanderbilt because of how good they are. But the best thing he's done is keep everything in-house, and he felt – even when you see some of the things that were going on during the week of practice last week, it just felt that everybody was just bought in because, again, in coaching change and coaching situations like that, the one thing that the coach has to do, the interim has to do, is keep everybody in, keep everybody bought in. Like, you would have never known that Auburn team that played Vanderbilt was under 500 because it just looked like a brand new unit, a brand new team. But I think what DJ Durkin has done is truly accept that, hey, I may just be the interim coach. This could be a week-to-week interview, and I may not know it. But his responsibility is still those guys in that locker room, and he's completely bought in. And I can respect that.
Yeah, no, he seems to be doing a fantastic job, and a lot of the players seem to be responding the right way. So, we'll see what the final 2 games of the regular season hold and what the future holds for Coach Durkin and whatever his future may be, whether that's at Auburn or elsewhere in the world of college football. But how about the other side of the state? How's Alabama preparing? They got a big one this weekend, a revenge game with a lot on the line against the Oklahoma Sooners. We'll let you hear from Kalen DeBoer some updates from the Crimson Tide. That's coming up next here on JOX. 6:17. Welcome back into Morning Jocks here on your Tuesday morning. The second edition of the college football playoff rankings. Those will be coming out tonight around 7 p.m. and we'll dive into that. What you may need to know ahead of tonight's rankings coming up here in just a little bit. But we got to get to the Alabama side of things, so took a little detour and heard a couple of comments from DJ Durkin involving Ashton Daniels and how they're having discussions about whether or not to play him against Mercer and if he wants to take that redshirt opportunity to either come back to Auburn another year or be able to enter the transfer portal and go somewhere else. Because you have to imagine, right, if he's able to have a performance reminiscent of what he did against Vanderbilt against Alabama in the Iron Bowl, whether it's Auburn or somewhere else, he's going to have an opportunity to be a starting quarterback somewhere in college football next season. So and going to have to keep an eye on that. But before we get to Kalen DeBoer, I just have to, I was sharing this with Damien in the break. I really do have to give Bama Hater credit because he's been sending in the same text for like a month now and just revising it each and every week. Because he chimes in this morning on the courtesy GMC text line, 205-834-9450, just like all of you wonderful listeners can do as well. But he says, if Miami wins out but doesn't play in the ACC title game and Alabama gets beat by Oklahoma and Auburn, then who should make the playoff? You know what, Bama Hater? In that situation, I would have to say that Miami would probably get in the playoff over Alabama in this fantasy world that you live in. But I wanted to give him credit because he has texted in every week, and it must be really hard for him because Alabama hasn't lost in their last 8 games. They're on an 8-game winning streak, if anybody wasn't aware of that. And it's just really sad because every week he will revise the text with their next 2 opponents and say, well, when Alabama loses their next 2 games in a row, I'm going to call in and heckle you. Okay, well, unfortunately, the team that I support has Ty Simpson at quarterback, and you have Sid from Ice Age under center, and that's why your team is going to be a disappointment yet again. But I respect the dedication every single week of Bama Hater chiming in with his hatred, and doesn't have to be this way, man, but
it doesn't.
You choose to hate another program more than you love yours, and it's probably because yours has disappointed you for your entire life, or at least the last 25 years. All right, let's get to Kalen DeBoer because he had some comments yesterday at his weekly press conference because, as we know, Damien, they're taking on the Oklahoma Sooners, which is a revenge game for the Tide. That's the game last year that essentially knocked them out of the playoff conversation. As we all remember, 3 points. They scored 3 points.
It should have been more, but it was, the phantom illegal formation.
Yeah. Well, nonetheless, worst football game I've ever been to in my life. So let's hear from Kalen DeBoer, and this is him talking about last year's game. Is that being used as motivation? Is he talking about it? Are the players talking about it? Here's Kalen DeBoer on last year's Oklahoma game and how the team is using that this week.
Obviously, we went to their place and got beat up pretty good last year, and that's who's coming to town this week. And so, Coach Venables done an amazing job instilling a culture there. And, we got a team that is coming here hungry. They're in the hunt for a lot of different things as far as reaching their goals. But, for us, we do then try to make sure that we always are focused on really this team being, what we're centered on and us improving. And that's the focus is, again, how did we get to this point this year to where we've had the success? What's it going to take to be our best on Saturday? And so again, you try to hone in on that, but you can't help but remember, the past. And those questions that you asked just now were also asked, a few weeks ago when we played Vanderbilt and so forth. And so, our guys, should remember that because our experiences help us be better the next time around.
So there you go. That's Kalen DeBoer on last year's Oklahoma game, and if that's being used as motivation this week for his team. I also thought it was interesting because if you go back a couple of weeks ago to the Ole Miss Oklahoma game, when maybe it started to come out that maybe Oklahoma's like, I don't want to say stealing signs, but finding a way to steal signs. Okay, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead,
I
just
don't
go ahead
know.
and admit it,
I don't know
right?
another way to say it.
Yeah.
Hey, it was your coach that called it out, if I remember correctly.
That's all Venables does. This is a recurring theme for him.
So
all that cheating.
Anyways, so if you missed that, Lane Kiffin had brought that up during the Ole Miss Oklahoma game a couple of weeks ago. And so that's kind of been a thing now is, okay, so does Oklahoma really steal these signs and all that good stuff? So I did think it was interesting yesterday because Ryan Grubb actually got asked about that. And his response to that was, if Brent Venables, if you're listening to me right now, I'm changing everything. So I did think that was interesting. And that did get brought up because I know some people I've seen online talking about, oh, it's going to be really tough if Oklahoma's stealing signals and things like that. And let's be honest, right? Everybody steals signs. It's just a matter of how good are you at doing it without getting caught? And are you doing it in a way that's legal or
Connor Stallion's route?
Correct. So that's, again, I know that's going to be a talking point for some people heading into the game on Saturday with Alabama and Oklahoma. But how about the run game? That's another thing that we've talked about. We spent some time yesterday talking about it because it's a problem at this point. I think we can say it's a problem, right? You ran for 56 yards against LSU. That's the worst running game your offense has had since 2023 against Texas A&M. It wasn't good, and it seems to be getting worse. But something that we keep hearing, right, from people that cover the program and coaches, players, is that this offense maybe doesn't have a traditional running attack, right? But the way that they're able to utilize maybe the short passing game, it's an extension of the run game. So where maybe it's a 4-yard pass instead of a 4-yard carry, essentially you're getting the same outcome, right? Or that's the mentality that they have or seem to have in Tuscaloosa. So this is Kalen DeBoer. He was asked about this yesterday. This is him talking about the run game and if he views the horizontal passing game as an extension of that, and also maybe where Alabama can continue to get better in the actual run game.
You still want to be better in the run game than what we are, and we have been. So I don't think it's a systematic thing that we have with our structure. But you want to make a defense have to defend everything from sideline to sideline, and have them be concerned about what you're going to do vertically. And so we can talk forever because I would love to, because I love that part of it. The style and the schematics of it, but you saw in the game the other day. I mean, we had tight ends catching it on perimeter screens off of some runs. Isaiah Horton had some just different things to stretch the defense this way, to open up seams, to be able to run the football, and then the run game opens up the play action, which is now more of the vertical piece, and even your screens and goes and things like that. That's a part of, I think, what most good offenses do.
So there you go. Don't know how much better that makes you feel, right? Because again, like, you do need to have an actual passing game, but it's clear that that's kind of how they view things. And I mean, you even had Ryan Grubb yesterday because, after the LSU game, Ty Simpson made a comment essentially saying he thought they couldn't run the ball and it was a mental thing, right? Like, they've gotten to the point now where they haven't been able to run the ball. So now they've convinced themselves that they just can't do it. Ryan Grubb kind of pushed back on that. No, it's a physical thing. Like, we don't have guys that are physical enough to run the football, whether that's the offensive line or the running backs. And again, right, like, you found a way to make this work up to this point. You found a way to keep trucking along, but it feels like if this version of Alabama is going to be the best version of themselves, that's going to have to get better. And I just don't know where that's going to come from when you're in week 11 of the season. And, right, like at the beginning of the year, okay, well, Jam's hurt. Okay, well, then Jam comes back. Okay, well, he's still coming back and getting, like, that's out, right? Like, we've cycled through about 5 running backs this year now if you're Alabama, and none of it's hitting the way that you would want it to be.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say, and I don't think this is a knock on them as a whole, because I do think they're good at what they do. We're so used to at least having one running back in the room that's a home run hitter. Like, there's no, and I know the bar is extremely high, but there's no Trent Richardsons, no Mark Ingrams, Derrick Henrys of that nature. They're all kind of limited in what their role is. Not necessarily their role, but like their skill sets. Like, Jam Miller isn't a guy that's going to bust you. He's no Ahmad Hardy. Like, he's not going to bust a 70-yard run. But the physical nature in which they do run the football, you would think that, okay, yeah, it may be ugly maybe an ugly 3 yards in a cloud of dust, but you have to establish some sort of consistency in the run game because you have to finish these teams off. Like, we're so used to the Alabamas, when they get into the 4-minute offense, they can ground and pound. There's nothing you can really do. And I think, even offensive line play is a little bit different than it has been in years past, just the nature of the game. But you do want to find some sort of caveat to it. And he brings up a great point. The Hort was on a passing game of, screens, because you see a lot of it in the air raid when there's a lot of swing passes, there's a lot of tunnel screens, there's like little quick screens and things on the RPOs. So there's ways around it, but you do want to feel confident that, hey, when it's time to finish off an opponent, we need to be able to chew the clock up and also run the football effectively. But you don't have like just that home run hitting guy that can say, hey, give me the ball 20 times a game and I'll do the rest. And I think it's tough. It is tough to be in the situation. And to your point, like, if you haven't truly established that as your identity this point into the season, it's going to be difficult to find the switch all of a sudden and it works. So I think it's just kind of one of those things. It's like, remember the Titans. It's like Novocaine. You just got to keep adding to it. You just got to keep chipping away, and eventually you'll run into that break. But it just hasn't happened yet.
No, it hasn't. And I think, I'm looking at this right now, and again, it's just kind of interesting how things have changed, right? You go back. So this will be Alabama's 4th season in a row without a 1,000-yard running back or rusher of any kind. The last guy to run for over 1,000 yards was Brian Robinson Jr. in 2021. It will also be the 4th straight year you don't have a 1,000-yard receiver either. So again, just the things that you could pretty much count on having at least one of those guys every year in both of those categories. And now, I mean, you've had good play, right? Like, you had Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs obviously was incredible. I think they underutilized him. Ryan Williams was great last year, but he only had 850 yards. I mean, Jeremy right now has 600 yards this year. So yeah, it's different than what you're used to in the past, and they're finding ways to win. But yeah, you don't really have that home run threat specifically in the backfield that you've just seen Alabama have so often here in recent memory. So, but that's what's going on there with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Much more time this week to talk about that Oklahoma game because it's going to be a big one, as we all know. But the College Football Playoff, 2nd edition of the rankings coming out tonight. What do you need to know? What big movement could we be in store for this week? Will Texas A&M be the number 1 team in the country? We'll break it all down for you next here on JOX. Welcome back into Morning Jocks. Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here with you on a chilly Tuesday morning as we roll along with the college football conversation and some of you chiming in on the courtesy GMC text line this morning, 205-834-9450. Let's see. Chris chimes in this morning. He says, if y'all can you give me a rundown of defensive statistics for the nation, like total defense, run defense, pass defense, etc. For what team? If you can tell us what team, Chris, yeah, I can help you out with that, but I don't know. If you're just talking the whole country, that would be a lot to go through real quick. David chimes in this morning. He says, Chris Kapilovich is the problem. If you're not familiar, that's the offensive line coach for Alabama. He says he's been the problem since he got to Tuscaloosa. The O-line has been garbage, especially in run blocking. Fire him and bring in somebody that knows what they're doing to coach an offensive line. It really is that simple.
I'm a push back on that because I don't necessarily think it's a schematic issue. I mean, players have to be responsible as well. Like, if you don't necessarily, you could probably attest to recruiting, but I mean, Tyler Booker just got drafted, first round last year, and he was looked at as one of the better offensive linemen, but they still didn't have a 1,000-yard rusher. I think you can look at the players and say that, maybe they, not to say they ain't got that dog in them, but, there's not a, like a Cam Robinson type offensive lineman. I mean, Parker Brailsford, he's close, and I think that Caden Proctor can get there, but I don't necessarily think they got that nastiness in them of, looking Ryan Grubb in the face and saying, hey, when we get into, 4-minute offense, ground and pound. Like, I think that schematically they're fine. It's just execution in some areas. Like, they're just not – maybe the identity is just not established with the run game of, hey, look the offensive coordinator or the play caller in the face and saying, run behind me. Like, simple as that. Let's not even get cute about it. Let's run inside zone, run outside zone. We got this. I don't necessarily think that's a coaching issue. I think that's more of a players executing.
I was about to say, at a certain point, it comes down to the guys that are on the field. There's 11 of them, and they got to go and do their job. But, yeah, I mean, look, I understand the complaints about the offensive line, because I will say this. I think the offensive line in pass pro has been rather solid this year, but it does feel like this is now maybe 3 or 4 years in a row where coming into a season you heard about how great an offensive line was going to be for Alabama, and they haven't been like Joe Moore Award finalists, good, like that kind of situation. And so I think maybe that's where some of the frustrations come from up front there with the offensive line for Alabama, is not that they're bad, but they're just not elite. Like, we kind of, let's be honest, a lot of people hype them up to be in the offseason, and then it turns out to be a little bit of a disappointment. Let's see. Okay. Somebody asked, Chris was asking, I guess what I'm asking is, who are the top total defenses in the country, and where do Alabama and Oklahoma rank? Okay, well, I can tell you that real quick.
Yeah, in points per game, Oklahoma defensively is 7th in the nation, and Alabama is 14th.
Okay. Yeah, let's see. In terms of total yards allowed, Oklahoma is 3, 4, 5, 6. They're 7th in the country, and yards allowed, they're number 1 in the SEC in that regard. And where is Alabama? They are. I will just say this. I'm having to scroll. So let's see. Where's Alabama? Okay, Alabama is. I'm sorry, I'm not going to count all of these out. I'm going to guesstimate about 15.
17.
17. Okay, there you go. So there you go. So Oklahoma's 7th in total yards allowed per game. Alabama 17th. And you said, what was the scoring defense for both of them?
Scoring, Oklahoma is 7th and Alabama is 14th.
Okay, there you go. And as we all know, Oklahoma, the strength of their defense is their run defense. Their run defense is very, very good. A little more susceptible to the pass. I think you saw that in the Tennessee game, for example, a little bit in the Ole Miss game as well. But yeah, Oklahoma is very good defense. I think you could argue they're going to be the best defense that Alabama will have played thus far, because I know normally you'd go, whoa, they played Georgia. Oklahoma defense better than Georgia defense this year. There's some dogs out there, so definitely going to be a big challenge. Going going to be a big challenge moving forward. John Mackey says, you Bammers need a running back? We've got a whole mess of them in Aggie land. You want Owens, Daniels, Emmitt Smith Jr., Morrow, or Le'Veon Moss, who's coming back soon. All better than anybody that y'all have in Tuscaloosa. Thank you, John Mack. If you would like to send one of them over, I'm sure Alabama would be happy to take. I mean, if you just want like Christmas in November, something like that, that would be that'd be great.
That's what's so frustrating about giving Texas A&M credit. Like, you avoid. Again, you just play the teams that are on your schedule. But
I have decided to just let John Mack have his fun and play into it,
right,
because they're inevitably going to be. They're not going to win a national championship, and so he's inevitably going to have his heart broken because his team will have never won anything in his life. So we're going to let him have it for right now because I get it. Like, they're having a great season, and I'm happy for John Mack. Like, I am, because he hasn't had a lot to be happy about in his life. So this is great, but. Right. It's going to be – I'm just saying there are some particular fan bases that have never won anything that have just such an inflated sense of self-worth this season, and it's going to be really sad for all of them when Ohio State wins another national championship. I'm sorry, but I'm gonna hate to watch y'all not know how to handle disappointment. But that's for another time. But we do have the college football playoff rankings coming out tonight, and didn't want to forget about those. So this is the second edition of the rankings, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Damien, or you think that I'm wrong, but it feels like there's not going to be a ton of movement. I know I said, well, maybe will Texas A&M be number one? I don't think Texas A&M will be number one. Now, it will be interesting, right? Do they reward Texas A&M for what they did to Missouri and maybe flip them in Indiana because of how close Indiana came to losing that game to Penn State? But also, Texas A&M, they now have 3 wins or road wins against ranked opponents this year. Ohio State and Indiana have 2 of those combined. So you just kind of start to wonder, okay, well, at what point do the new metrics, the strength of schedule, the strength of record numbers that the committee had said they were going to emphasize before the season, well, it doesn't look like they are, because otherwise Texas A&M would already be number one because they are ahead of Ohio State and Indiana in those areas. So did Indiana's game against Penn State open the door for Texas A&M maybe to move up a spot there? I think Alabama's going to stay at 4. I don't think you're going to see any sort of a change there. Texas is probably going to move up now, and they will maybe be that last team in the playoff. But I'm interested to see what happens with the ACC and what happens with the team like BYU, right? Like, how far does BYU fall? Because it's only their first loss of the season, but they don't look like a playoff team based on what you saw against Texas Tech. So do they give them kind of the Georgia Tech treatment, right, where we saw Georgia Tech lose one game, albeit not to a team as good as Texas Tech, but Georgia Tech lost one game and fell, 10 spots in the playoff rankings. So we'll see what happens there. But I think those are kind of the big things to look out for. Does Texas A&M get some movement, right? Do they start to respect the metrics a little bit more? What happens with the ACC and what happens with BYU? But I would certainly expect that Oklahoma's going to move up a spot. They'll probably be the first team out. Texas will probably be the last team in. And again, it's looking pretty good that unless all of these teams just, kind of beat up on each other the last 2 weeks of the season, I think the SEC is going to have a real shot at getting 5 teams in the playoff.
Yeah, and also that G5 spot. Now that Memphis is lost.
Well, yeah, USF is in the top 25 of the AP now, so do they kind of take that spot?
Yeah.
Even though Memphis beat them head-to-head, right?
Right. So because we have so many battles now, I'm interested to see what this does look like. And kind of to your point, I think BYU is probably the most interesting because, yeah, you played a ranked Texas Tech team, but is that a quote-unquote good enough loss to still keep you afloat as far as being kind of on either the outside looking in, or do you get kind of like how far do you take Texas and Oklahoma up? And how far do you drop BYU down because of the loss? The eye test will tell you that, yeah, they looked overmatched against Texas Tech. Like, Texas Tech looks like they're legit. So I'm just interested to see what they do with BYU because of how the loss happened.
Yeah.
Now, had it been a game-winning field goal or something, probably have a different conversation. But Texas Tech dominated that football game. So now how far does BYU drop, and how does that shake up kind of the middle portion of the college football playoff? And then, like I said, the G5. I mean, now USF has entered the chat, and it doesn't seem as though they're going to the fall off, but who knows? Who knows at this point?
Yeah, and this is where we get to the fun part too of all right, so we got to hear from the committee last week. When did they start kind of I don't know, when do they start going back on their word or when did they start contradicting what they say from week to week of, cuz that was a big complaint I think people had last year, right? Was it felt like every week the criteria changed in terms of what the committee was looking for in the rankings. And so are we going to get a similar thing this year or is there going to be that consistency where hey, even if you go, well, I don't necessarily agree with the criteria or what they how they weigh the criteria in terms of what's most important to them, there's at least consistency so you know what to expect. Because I think that's what drives people crazy is you feel like every single week you're like, okay, well, last week you were given Ohio State credit for this, but now you're using that as a knock against them and you're using this metric to uplift, Oregon or whatever. And so we'll see if they fall into that pit again or if this committee decides to, hey, stick to their guns and be consistent the whole way through. But it'll be interesting nonetheless, as that'll be coming up here in just over 12 hours over on ESPN. But a lot of you chiming in with your thoughts now on the college football playoff, what's going on with Alabama as well. So we'll get to those. 205-834-9450. We'd love to hear from you on the Courtesy GMC text line as we roll along on Morning JOX. 6:49 here on your Tuesday morning. Appreciate you tuning into Morning Jocks. Conrad and Damien here with you for a few more moments before we hand you off to McElroy and Kublik in the morning, where they will carry on the college football conversation. And I'm sure one thing that they will probably get into, and I just wanted to bring up briefly, I know we'll talk about it today on Three Man Front from 10 to 2 for sure, and that is the latest on Brian Kelly and LSU, because if you missed it, there was a story that came out, I was going to bed last night, and I was about to turn my phone off and lay down, and I saw this come across, and so I had to read it real quick. But essentially, LSU has now essentially they have now stated or are trying to argue that they fired Brian Kelly for cause, which would allow them to mitigate part of the $54 million buyout that he is owed. And obviously, Brian Kelly's like, no, you fired me because the football program wasn't where you wanted it to be, not because I did anything, off the field or any, I think you know where we're going with that, right? Something controversial off the field that could have led to him being fired with cause. So that's going to be an interesting situation to see how that plays out. So LSU, they are now trying to say that they have reason to fire Brian Kelly and that Scott Woodward didn't have the power or authority to fire him. So technically, he actually isn't officially terminated from the university is what they're arguing, because Scott Woodward, who was their athletic director, they say didn't have the power to fire the head football coach. That whole thing is a mess. And look, it's a great job. You have a lot of resources there. You got a lot of talent around that university. They got to figure that crap out, because nobody there seems to have any idea what they're doing. And now this is going to hurt, in my opinion. This is the kind of thing that can hurt your ability to attract a big name head coach to come there, because why would I want to put up with that headache? Y'all don't know what you're doing. I don't even know who my boss would be. The whole thing's just messy down there in LSU right now. So that's certainly an interesting story that I'm sure we'll get into on JOX throughout the other programs here today. But let's finish up on the Courtesy GMC text line here, where a lot of you have chimed in with your thoughts this morning. Like John Mack again, who says the Aggies are going to have to beat Ohio State because Lord knows Alabama can't. Only time they did was in the COVID year, and that doesn't even count.
See? He's moving the goalposts.
See, but would it have counted that year if Texas A&M got in the playoff?
Uh-huh.
But you didn't, because you got your ass beat by Alabama, and the committee didn't want to see that again.
Yep. And all I heard all season long after that loss was, if we get Alabama again, we want Bama again. No, we've seen that head-to-head. We know exactly how that was. That was the greatest season in Texas A&M history since
So the year that you had to play 10 SEC games instead of 8, that's the year that doesn't count. I would argue that year should maybe count a little bit more.
He said it's COVID. Nope, don't have it. Didn't.
Not Alabama's fault. Ohio State played 3 games that year and made it to a national championship game. They almost lost to Northwestern in the Big Ten championship game, if you remember that. This one says, it's going to be funny to watch the Aggies get put out of the CFP in a rematch with Notre Dame, and Indiana's going to win the Natty. I like how they just kind of threw that in there.
Right. Whoa. You had me in the first half.
This one says, y'all some Bama Golden Boys. I'm just...
I am an Ole Miss fan. I've been rocking with Lane all season long.
And I am an Alabama fan, but I also just hate Texas A&M.
Yeah, and I also picked Tennessee to beat Alabama.
Yeah.
So
that one didn't quite work out.
It didn't.
It did last year, though. Let's see. This one says from Lance, damn A&M fans. Old Jimbo's boys are finally coming around. I bet he takes credit. I don't know what it is, but the A&M fans I know are all scumbags. Let's see. Ellis. Okay, never mind. We're not doing that one. Not doing that one. Let's see. Tom says, this sounds like a Jeremy Pruitt type situation with Brian Kelly. I see. But it's not like you can get Brian Kelly for paying recruits, right? That's
right.
legal now. Like
that's what I'm saying.
The thing that they got Jeremy Pruitt for is perfectly legal now in college athletics.
Get that man his money.
Look, I would just say it like this, like anything else, right? You signed a contract. We both agreed to the terms of the deal.
Give me my money.
If you didn't want to pay me, then why'd you fire me?
Yep.
Like,
simple as that.
You made the decision to move on. More power to you.
This all could have been avoided.
Well, it's just like when they fired Ed Orgeron. It was, his mentality of, which door you want me to walk out of? Like, I think that's how Brian Kelly was. Okay, which door you want me to go out of? Oh, now you don't want to pay me my money? Well, pretty sure we have a contract here that has both of our signatures on it, and
We can give you 25. Nope, it says 54. How about 30?
No one had to offer Brian Kelly that contract, but
Exactly.
Scott Woodward and LSU wanted to do that, and you are now tied to the terms of that contract. That's how it works.
Give me my money.
Let's see. Somebody bringing up the Alabama changing their signals for Oklahoma. Yep, that's what. Yep, Ryan Grubb said they're going to do that for this upcoming game. Casey says it's time for Bama to just lean into the strengths of the team and throw it 75 times a game if need be. I mean, they're already doing close to that. I'm just kidding.
There'll be some long games.
Yeah, no kidding about that. Let's see. This says John Mack's going to be upset when all those players leave Texas A&M, all those great running backs. We'll see. We'll see. I appreciate all of you chiming in this morning. It was a fun morning, Jocks. We're back tomorrow at 6. Mac